Are you seriously going to eat, you fat blibbity blabbity blob? I mean, it's something you might be like,
continual.
why would I want to start this?
Sensitive. She's so sensitive.
You are listening to the Tami Talks Unscripted Healing Podcast, where we share stories that are, you guessed it, unscripted.
That's the thing, this journey doesn't stop.
It doesn't really. Right? We have a general sense of the topic each episode, but really the whole point is just to show up and be authentic and let our inner child speak its truth. And I have continued to work through that story of constantly hearing, well, we don't want, got a hot dog on our hands. Yeah, guess what, Mr. Sabatsky, you do. So I'm so excited that you are here, and it is my hope that you hear yourself somewhere in the story so that way you can feel seen and heard as well. So let's start talking. Welcome back to the Tami Talks Unscripted Healing Podcast. We got a good one for you today. But first, how was Karen's episode from last time? Hopefully you guys got some takeaways from that, because I love her story and how amazing and incredible it can be when you reconnect with your inner child and just the joy that you can bring back into your life. So sometimes this healing journey can feel daunting and sometimes maybe even scary for some. But man, that hasn't been my experience or my overall experience. And I think back to how many times I wanted to just throw my hands up too. Like, I'm done. This sucks. Because it just feels like things are kind of crumbling down around you. But again, when you lock into having faith that there's something greater out there, or what it would really be like to reconnect with your inner child, it's so powerful. It's so powerful. And again, there's so much joy at the end of it. And so hopefully those are some of the takeaways with Karen. And I hope to have her back, because man, like I said, we just scratched the surface with that conversation. But before we jump into today's episode, I'm just going to go ahead and celebrate that this is like episode 8. And it kind of feels like another little milestone, because like a month ago, this was just a dream. And it's happening, and it's been really cool. And I wanted to thank you all for being here with me and staying tuned in and providing me the space to be able to share stories and hopefully help reach you and your inner child in some way. And so today I want to talk a little bit about these quote unquote parts that I keep referring to, because if you listened to the first 7 episodes, you've probably heard me mention these protective parts or ego. And maybe feeling like, what the heck is she talking about? So backtracking a little bit to try to give some frame of reference to that is we all have an ego. We all have an ego, but I feel like ego has gotten a really bad rep, because for a lot of us, ego kind of gets distorted and takes over. But we were all born with a healthy sense of ego. Ego is kind of what is meant to help keep us safe. It's supposed to be a little bit more of that logical part of us, the one that, analyzes the situation and takes in the data and the information to help us make decisions. But when those needs that I talked about earlier aren't met, right? The ones of feeling seen and heard, love, accepted, when those needs aren't being met, and this is my take on things. So, and I know if you've ever like dug into, IFS type stuff, internal family systems, they refer to those parts as different things like protectors and all of those types of things. But what made sense for me and what resonated for me was to think of ego as these parts that we start to take on, almost like characters in a play, right? We should be the main character in our own play, but somewhere along the line, ego is like, nope, you need to sit backstage. And that's when we get into those scripted lives. We're not even on the stage. We have all of these parts out there, wearing the masks and putting on the costumes and being this person for this group and this person for that group. And I'll show up and, we just do these things that aren't really who we are. And the whole time we're sitting backstage, just like, what is going on out there? What is going on in my life? What am I doing? I hate this job. This relationship is super toxic, but it's like you can't step out of it because you're backstage. And all of these other parts are trying to navigate your life for you, all in effort to keep your inner child safe. And so that's what I want to explore a little bit, because I think when you start to gain this perspective, it really opens up a whole new level of healing for you, understanding for you, and really allows you to take back control of your life. So that way you can start to like throw that script out like, no. This is not how this play is going to go. I am in charge of my life. I want to do things that give me joy, that light me up, that I'm passionate about. But you have to take back the driver's seat. You have to say, cut. I'm ending this play. And now you are going to follow this script, my script. Or just live life unscripted. Haha. If I had my old snare drum, I would have given myself a little out there. So when we think about those basic needs, when they're not met, again, and they could be very subtle, just the simple, hey, mom, and mom. All of a sudden, ego chimes in, like, perks up and is like, oh no, there's a need not being met. Inner child is sensing this, feeling unworthy. We gotta change this. And so that's when ego can start to like, what should I do here? What part should I take on? Maybe if I'm the perfect kid, that'll work. Because then my parents will really love me if I'm always perfect and I'm always achieving. That's how I'll receive love. Okay, cool. So that's a part that we take on, is that inner perfectionist all of a sudden gets center stage. While backstage, your inner child is like, I just want to be a kid. I just want to be able to try new things and make mistakes and decide that I don't love gymnastics anymore and I don't want to do it. It's like, nope, you need to do that. And you need to be perfect at it. And it's things like that, and there are so many situations. I talked about the whole hot dog thing and that, like, now playing small. So in some cases, playing small and underachieving served me, kept me safe. And that's a part that I started to play, was the underachiever. And so that also kept me very safe, but very stuck in my career, in many areas of my life. But I had to make sure that I could heal that part and tell that part, like, no, it's safe for me to be seen. It's safe for me to be who I really am and speak my truth and get out there like little Tam Tam has always wanted to. And so we can be the people pleaser. I mean, that's a pretty popular one. That one is usually like the lead, the lead character in this play. So many of us fall into that people pleasing because that's what got you seen and accepted, right? The more we people please, the more people like us, because what kid doesn't want to feel liked? If a kid stands up for themselves one time and they get shunned from a friend group, do you think they're doing that again? They're going to turn into that people pleasing, like, well, it's just easier for me to agree with everybody, or it's easier for me to just do what everyone wants. And we start to take on that role and it almost starts to become our identity. And so in that conversation with Karen, she actually named her parts. And I actually find this super helpful because otherwise it's hard for us to detach from it. And I think that's where sometimes we stay stuck in these spirals, is we just beat ourselves up. Why do I keep doing that? Why do I keep falling back? It's not you, it's your protective parts. And this moment of realization came to me. And it's so interesting to think back to my journey and now looking back how it's all been laid out for me. So when I made the jump from being an outpatient dietitian at this major healthcare facility into entrepreneurship, I got into a private practice and it felt like such a cool, exciting opportunity at first. And then it got pretty toxic, actually. And I knew it. My whole body, I dreaded going there. I dreaded being there, the way I felt there. Like nothing about it felt good. But I know I had to be in that position to learn this one thing. And that was about parts. Because when I learned about these parts and gathering that from this internal family system stuff, everything clicked for me. It was like, ooh, sorry, just did that in the microphone. Sorry if I blasted your ears. It was a major aha moment, dot connection, so much made sense. Because for so much of my life, especially my relationship with food, I was one or two things. I was either trying to be super restrictive by only eating like 5 foods, only trying to eat like 500 calories, or I went to the other extreme where I was eating entire pizzas in my car. Or my favorite is my friends went downtown. This is when I was in college. And instead of going out and having fun, I made, they were apple cinnamon muffins, and they were fat free. So that means they were calorie free, right? So I told myself, and I ate all 12 of them that night because I didn't want to feel left out. I didn't want to feel like I wasn't worthy enough to go out with my friends who were all gorgeous humans. And then here I am, the fat friend. I didn't want to feel that. And I had so much shame about how I felt that I wouldn't even allow myself to go out with them. They never made me feel that way. That was me. And to numb that, I used food. And so I would go from one extreme to the other. And how many of you can resonate with that all or nothing? I'm either all in or I'm all out, all or nothing. And I learned about, this was my restrictive part. My restrictive part remembers what it was like to be called a whale when I was a sophomore. And it said, hey, if you want to fit in, if you want to be accepted, you need to eat this way. You need to restrict yourself in order to lose weight because your worthiness is based on your weight. So that was how my restrictive part actually was trying to protect little Tam Tam from feeling unworthy, right? It was protection. Was it healthy for me? Absolutely not. But in its own mind, that was the best it could come up with. It's like, no, this is great. This is a great plan. But that only worked for so long until my rebellious part was like, oh, hell no. This restrictive thing that you're doing and only eating 500 calories and only, chicken breast and broccoli, it ain't cutting it. This is awful. So anytime I would feel triggered, my rebellious part would come kick the door down and it would blow the house down. And I would emotionally binge eat. And it was this back and forth, back and forth. So they were both trying to almost kind of fight for power. Like, I know best. No, I know best. And it was almost, and now by taking that outside of myself and not beating myself up for always falling into this all or nothing pattern, I could see it outside of myself and what was actually happening. And that my rebellious part was also trying to protect me. Maybe trying to protect me from the fact that I wasn't giving my body the nutrition or calories that it needed. And that living in this restrictive little box wasn't healthy either. But there was no happy medium. The happy medium is me. The happy medium is me actually knowing what is best for me, just like you do. When you can get out of your head, whether it's dropping into your heart, like you know, this has never been a knowledge problem for anyone. I mean, there's enough knowledge out there about nutrition and wellness and all of those things. Like, this is not a knowledge problem. This is that we have unhealed parts who constantly think that they know best on how to protect your inner child from feeling whatever it actually needs to feel. And when I made that connection, it was like, whoa. And I used the analogy of like being on a bus. And I should be driving this bus, the one who actually does know what to do and is capable of doing it. If I'm driving this bus, all right? And the whole goal is like to get to our inner child's little happy place, right? And we have all of these other parts on the bus. And sometimes when we feel triggered, when they see a threat, when they see a deer, when they see, something off the side of the road, or there's a bump, or there's another car about to come, ideally, a healthy ego would tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, just so you know, there's a deer over there. Just keep an eye out in case you need to swerve the bus. Or, hey, you're going to need to stop because there's another car coming. Like, we want our healthy ego to just be there to, hey, just so you know, you might want to look at this situation. You might want to think about this. You want it to tap you on the shoulder. You don't want it to completely take over the steering wheel, because that's when you go down binge eating lane or completely I'm unworthy restrictive drive. It'll take you down a path that you do not want to go on. And how many of us have been on that path for most of our lives? We're not where we want to be, whether it's with our health goals, whether it's with our career, whether it's relationships. We are not where we want to be because we have taken a massive detour because we're not driving. Your protective parts are still trying to take over. And this is where Karen mentioned this so beautifully, is the pause. A purposeful pause. When you feel triggered, before you let your ego swoop in and, put on one of those masks and take on that role, you have to be like, whoa, 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 wait. And you can almost feel it. You got to really pay attention to how your body feels. Your body will tell you, hey, we're feeling triggered here. Hey, there's a deer out on the side of the road. It'll tell you whether it's, feeling that anger build up or sometimes that rage, or you're starting to get, like sick to your stomach or just anxious feeling, like, but we don't always associate the physical feelings with maybe the emotional stuff that's underneath all of that. And so part of our goal here is to make sure that you take that pause, because when you take the pause, you can drop in and be like, okay, why am I feeling this way? Okay, because so-and-so totally cut me off in that meeting. I didn't feel seen. And that reminds me of being a kid who never got called on in class when I had great ideas. I mean, that happens. I've heard those stories. It can be very triggering when you don't feel seen in your adult life. So it's recognizing that moment instead of feeling triggered at that work meeting. You didn't feel seen. You dropped in, you recognized, oh, wow, it's because I didn't feel seen, versus your protective part swooping in and getting mad, yelling at a coworker, feeling frustrated, slamming your computer down, whatever it is that we do, that's when ego swoops in. But you have to take the pause. Because if you don't take the pause, that's when ego goes into those 4 F's: the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And nothing really good tends to happen when you're in those. And so you have to take the pause. Otherwise, that'll be the default. And it's so quick. It's so quick. This actually happened to my son last week. My daughter scared him, and they were just playing. And she just like, boo, whatever she did. And it scared him. And I don't know if he had a little Nerf football or something. Well, he just instinctually like threw it at her. Well, now she got hit in the face. Like, oh my gosh. So his response was such a like knee-jerk reaction, right? He was in that flight. He saw a bear. He wanted to fight the bear. He got scared by the bear and wanted to fight it. But the bear was his sister. And his reaction was to throw that football to get that threat away. And there are other times where, we might go into the flight. It was just like, I'm out of here. I'm checking out. I'm not paying attention. Maybe I'll just scroll social media for however long. Or there's so many things that we will just automatically go into. And that's when we are on autopilot. And that's what we have to break out of. But you can't break out of autopilot unless you take the pause. And so, or going into freeze. I don't know if I've shared this story yet, but here we are sharing it on a podcast. Oh man, this is a good one. Just to explain what can happen in these moments. So I'm in 5th grade. I'm a percussionist, and my band teacher she's amazing, but she was super strict. Like, you did not mess around in band lessons with Faith Erickson. But we were good. We were legit. We were actually better than our high school band. But for whatever reason, I had a band lesson and I did not practice for it. And now looking back, I could have carried the story that I was just irresponsible or, wasn't making it a priority, all of these things. And I never really thought about it all these years because literally I probably blocked it out because it was so embarrassing. But I walked in, I remember going up the stairs to this band lesson already in fear that I was going to disappoint her because I respected her. I was going to disappoint her. I was going to embarrass myself. But my ego is already spinning, trying to come up with all of these stories about why I didn't practice. Like, oh, my dog ate my drumsticks or whatever. That's what ego does, is creates these stories. But now I know, now that I have validated my childhood experience, it's very likely that I was probably in my own sense of flight at home, where I was trying to kind of escape some of the stress that was maybe there, or just underlying tension that was there. Even as a 5th grader, I was probably trying to find some sort of escape. It was probably hard for me to focus on the things I actually needed to do. And that's, again, results of childhood wounds. So I have a lot more compassion for myself and why I didn't practice now. So anytime you are finding yourself in avoidant behavior, sit with that, look at that, because there's usually something more to that. So anyway, I go up there and it's not just if it were snare drum or something like that, like I could have probably pulled that off, but it was a bell lesson. I had to get the bells out and I was not super strong with the bells. It wasn't my forte. So I was like, I'm not going to be able to wing this. Oh, shoot. And I couldn't. It was so obvious that I didn't practice. And I could literally feel that embarrassment just rising up in my body where I'm just feeling so embarrassed and have so much shame about this. And she's like, nope, we need to go back. That wasn't right. Go back. I can't fudge my way through this. And then all of a sudden I freeze. I absolutely freeze. I freeze so much that I lose all control. And I straight up just lost all control and peed my pants in front of my 5th grade band director. Like that, for some reason, my parts thought that was better than just owning up to the fact that I didn't practice. It's like, let's just do this instead of actually owning up to it, being vulnerable, sharing where you're really at. And then I took off running. And so, I think about these kinds of situations that we get into if we're not taking those pauses, if we're not being true and authentic about where we're at in life and what's going on in our day. You can think about that when you go into work and the morning got off to a rough start. To sometimes just be open about that. It's not that you're trying to rain on others' parade or whatever, but just this is where I'm at today. It's all good, but this is where I'm at. And I'm just going to honor that. And it just allows you to feel how you're feeling and then moving through it. But what I have found, and I didn't even know this was one of the F's, is the whole fawning thing. But wow, it turns out I'm a professional fawner. And that's the people pleasing one. That's when you see a threat and you want to become best friends with the threat. So here I am trying to, make friends with this bear. And that was where I really lost any sense of boundaries, where I lost any sense of being able to speak up for myself. And man, oh man, it gets you into situations and friendships and relationships that do not serve you. And so, but again, if you don't give yourself that pause, you don't even catch that you're falling into one of those 4 categories. Because that's when we really start to develop these different roles and these different characters. And so when I'm referring to these parts, these protective parts, all they're trying to do is protect your inner child. They just have really interesting and not so helpful ways of doing it. But in their mind, they think they're doing a great job because they're avoiding the feelings. They're bypassing what actually needs to be felt. So they feel like they're doing your inner child a favor when really all your inner child wants is to feel seen and heard in that moment. And so that's what you can do. But it does help to start to see aspects of yourself as these parts so you can find out who is the real you underneath all of those parts. When do you get to come center stage? Right? But you need to be able to say, cut, hold up here. We're going to take a little intermission here on this thing I'm calling life, this play I'm calling life, and see if this is the way I want it to actually play out for the rest of my life. Karen mentioned that she's 53 and just now almost 53 and reconnecting with her inner child for the first time in over 40 years, finally stepping into this lead character role. Same thing for me. I was playing small, playing all these other roles and parts for all of my life. And it's not until the age of 41 where I feel like I'm finally stepping center stage in my own life. I'm the one directing the play now. I'm the one calling those shots now. But if I'm letting ego drive that bus and be the director of this, then yeah, I'm stuck behind the scenes, just watching my life go by. And so it's so empowering to be able to tap into that part and to understand it. And again, when you do that, when you take yourself out of it and you start to see these different parts of you and how you show up in different environments and different situations, it might help to actually name them. It really might, because then you can actually kind of talk to them whoa, Betty, why are you being so hard on me today? Well, I'm trying to protect. And then you can almost kind of have this dialogue and it helps you move through it. It's all about moving through it. And I think that's the coolest thing about inner child work is how you can move through it. You don't have to stay stuck. But so many of us are stuck back repeating these patterns because we keep trying to bypass them, because we keep trying to sweep them under the rug. And it's time to, again, like take off these Band-Aids and actually look at these wounds and look at what can I do to help heal these wounds. And it's making sure that you're no longer putting on the masks, that you're taking those pauses when you feel triggered to really sit with how you're feeling. That's all your inner child needs. She doesn't need to stay stuck in the situation, doesn't need to stay sad, but she might need you to feel that sadness for a moment and then move through it. And so get to know your parts, because that's when you can really stop the cycle of self-sabotage. Again, I was the queen of self-sabotage. I knew all the things, right? I have a master's degree in nutrition. Like I knew what I should be doing. But when I got triggered, all that knowledge went out the window, all of it. And I would be right back to binge eating. And then I would beat myself up afterwards, and it was that whole vicious cycle. But now I can be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Why am I feeling triggered? Why did my rebellious part think that was, the best option? And I can sit with that and move through it. But it's so fascinating to me when that was absolutely like such a part of who I was, for it to no longer be a thing, especially when it comes to like nutrition and working out and stuff like that. I'm not falling into those same cycles and patterns anymore because I have like integrated these parts and to find that healthy balance. So it's like now we're on this bus and we're like singing Kumbaya. Like my parts are on there. They're happy. Like we're chilling out. We're on the mission to make our inner child feel loved. Like everyone's on the same page. But my parts know that Big T is in charge now. Tami is calling these shots now. I am the director of this play. I'll call you guys in when I need you. I certainly want your input, but you don't get to take over anymore. And with that comes a level of appreciation for how your parts actually did serve you growing up, actually maybe did keep you safe. And so I think that's, no pun intended, that's part of it. So hopefully that gives you a little more understanding of what these parts are. And it's probably going to come up in every episode because it's such a huge part of this healing journey. But yeah, it's super helpful to help understand why we quote unquote self-sabotage. And I always use quotes around self-sabotage now because I don't see it as sabotage. I see it as protection. It's your parts trying to protect you. It feels like self-sabotage when you're an adult who actually does know better. But when you're triggered and you don't take that pause, you don't get a say. You don't have a role in that play. So make sure that you're giving yourself that pause and start getting inspired that, again, you're the author of your own story. You're the director of your own play. Like be your main character. Because when you do that, you get to call the shots in your life. But if not, it does feel like you're on autopilot and just in this hamster wheel. And no one deserves to live life that way. And your inner child certainly does not want to live life that way because he or she had big goals and dreams and knew what you were capable of. But if your ego and parts are running the show, they're going to keep you playing small, telling you're not worthy of those things. And so it's about fully embracing all those aspects so that way you and your inner child are center stage. So hopefully that helped give you a little perspective on all these parts. And yeah, I could talk about this stuff all day because you see it in everything that you do. And so I hope that you got a little takeaway. If you ever want to comment too, and just if something resonated or if you're recognizing parts that you have, I would love to hear that feedback and have that communication with you. And again, if you ever want to schedule something to be able to help connect those dots of like, oh, wow, look at that part of you. You didn't even know it was there. And here's how it was trying to protect you. That stuff lights me up. So, but anyway, I will wrap this one up for you guys today. Thank you so much for listening to this one, and love and honor your parts too, because their main goal, their entire existence is all wrapped in loving your inner child too. You guys just need to get on the same page about how to do that. All right, signing off for today. Thank you all so much. Until next time. Bye.
Tami Talks Unscripted Healing is produced by Mortarbox Media. Video, audio, and editing by me, Duke Adams. To learn how we can bring your podcast idea to life, or how we can make your current show even better, visit mortarboxmedia.com.